And last week we talked about Hallel because it was after the great miracles we saw on those 12 days in the base a few days ago. So I spoke to one of the officers, and he even told me just a bit of the stories. And even just hearing a bit of the stories, you realize that you should really thank Hashem for big things that happened and what could have happened in Israel. So Baruch Hashem, so we're thanking Hashem for that. We're here, we are able to learn, and we finished the war in 12 days with Israel doing great things. 2 weeks ago, we started to learn about where do we daven, okay? Especially about a shul, having windows closed, windows on the bima, and the halacha we will learn today, I think, is very relevant to coming back from after 2 Shabbatot that we didn't daven in shul. So after COVID, I was afraid that people will start davening in the houses, right? During COVID, after a few months of COVID, so a friend of mine, I was in the States then, and a friend of mine called me, asked me, do you feel the influence on communities by COVID? I said, no influence at all. I mean, everything's closed down, but and only after a few months I realized, yes, there's a big influence of people seeing the shul as less of a center because they got used to davening at home. And says the Shulchan Aruch, based on the Gemara. Says the Shulchan Aruch based on the Gemara in Brachot, in the beginning of Brachot, Daf Chet, page 8. Mi sheyesh lo bet hakneset be'iro, someone who has a shul in his town, in his city, ve'ino nichnas bo להתפלל, he doesn't come to shul to daven, nikra shachen ra, he's called a bad neighbor of Hashem. Because if you have a neighbor, you meet your neighbor every now and then, you come and say hello to your neighbor. But you have Hashem in shul, and if a person doesn't come to shul, so he's called a bad neighbor. And he causes exile for him and for his children. So the Gemara uses very harsh words. Also, the Shulchan Aruch brings it for halacha. What do you learn from the Shulchan Aruch? You should come to shul. You should come to shul. So even if there's minyanim outside, so for the 2 Shabbatot, we could daven outside, but when we can come back to shul, we're happy to be in shul. We should come to shul. So that's the halacha, a very important halacha to remember. How do we come to shul? On Shabbat, we try not to run, right? We walk calmly, we walk... Says the Shulchan Aruch, it's a mitzvah to run when you come to shul, to show that you're waiting to come to shul. And even on Shabbat, when we should walk calmly when we come to shul, even on Shabbat, we should run to shul. What about the opposite? When we leave shul, not to run out, right? Not to run out. That's in the past, shuls weren't in town; they were in the field. So we had the people who says if there's someone there stayed in shul and he's the last one in shul, the one second last should wait for him until he finishes davening. So he won't be the only one in shul. He'll start getting mixed up. He'll be afraid of coming back home. Good evening, welcome. No, yeah, we don't see so much.
Logically, they usually were in the center of shul.
I think we're talking about the times of the Gemara, of the Mishnah and the Gemara. The community has changed different times, different eras. So you do find some shuls in the center of the city. They used to have a bet midrash and the shul. I'm not sure what's a shul and what's a bet midrash. They're two different things. Bet midrash was more for learning, and who learns in the bet midrash? Someone who doesn't work or doesn't have to go to work. Who goes to the shul in the field? People who work in the field. So if you had maybe not so much of a city or a town, if you had more of a village with the main work with people with agriculture out of the town or out of the village, so they used to wake up early in the morning when it's still maybe dark and start walking towards the field, get to shul, daven, and then continue working in the field. Good evening. But I guess when we became more city people, So there wasn't so much a point of having the shuls outside of the city, because the whole purpose is on the way to see how it became urban, and also it affected halacha. How far do we need to go to search for a minyan? So let's say here we live in Tzfenevo, we have Pnei Shmuel, they have quite a few minyanim. But let's say you go on a trip, you go to some, I don't know, some camping in the middle of nowhere. Australians call it in the middle of whoop whoop. Whoop whoop. I'm not sure if it's also Americans, but in the middle of nowhere. So you where? Yiddish film. So you go camping. It is. And the closest minyan is 10 minutes drive. You have to drive for the minyan or not. If it's 10 minutes, it's still called close. If it's if it's 2 hours, obviously not. So where's the border? Where do we cut the border? Like, how far do we need to go to a minyan? This is the Shulchan Aruch, and that could be quite a common. If you live, I don't know, I'm not sure if you work, wherever you work, how far do you have to go to a minyan? To someone who's going he's on the way, on the road, he hit the road, and he comes to a city and he wants to sleep in the city. If he'll walk another 4 milin isn't 4 miles, it's more or less 4 kilometers. More or less 4 kilometers. So how long does it take to walk 4 kilometers? Very roughly, a quarter of an hour for kilometers. No. When we talk about the times, when these two yeah.
That's running.
18 minutes. Okay, so that's the rough. In the army, the walk Ketzev Shesh is even faster. But so if it's in any case on his way, he should continue those more or less 4 kilometers or 72 minutes. Today when you drive, the same thing. If you in any case, that's your direction. Okay, and tomorrow I get there for Shachrit. I mean, I'll just drive another hour and 15 minutes and get to the town, and so I'll just do a bit more of effort. Now I'll get there, and tomorrow I have Shachrit, tonight I'll have Mariv in the minyan, so a person should do it. If it's out of his way, so it's only 1 mil. Okay, 1 mil, more or less 18 minutes. Wait a minute. So if you don't have a car and you have to walk, so that's more or less the time to spend to get to a shul. So if you are camping in the middle of, middle of whoop whoop or middle of nowhere, so if you have a close minyan, 10, 15 minutes drive, maybe 18 minutes drive, you should go to a minyan. If it's more than that, so there's no obligation to go for a minyan. If you go for a minyan, so that's great. But if it's not on your way, that's how much we should go to try to do the effort for a minyan.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. It's a quarter of an hour, 18 minutes. 18 minutes. That's the time. Okay. We just no. Because also there's an obligation to daven in a minyan, or I'll say half an obligation. If you can't get to a minyan, so there's an obligation. If you don't have a minyan, so you don't have a minyan. Nothing you can do about it, right? But you mentioned about archaeologically, right? So they used to have a bet midrash and the shul. Okay? The bet midrash is considered holier than the shul. But not everyone used to go to a bet midrash. They used to go to a shul, because a bet knesset, because the shul is in the field towards where they used to work, and that's where they used to have the shul. A bet midrash is considered holier than a shul. Today, most shuls are also bet midrash. Most bet midrash are also shuls. We don't have so much this differentiation between them, but there is an importance of davening where we learn. So now we have a shiur, and afterwards we have your marriage. That's but the best thing, combining Torah and avodah, Torah and davening. What about? And here we come to, we're running through halachot. We started talking about appropriate place to daven. So one of the appropriate places to daven is my seat or my shul. When I go to my shul, I feel familiar there, right? I feel familiar. I know the place. I know the chazan. I feel comfortable. When I go to a shul where I'm not familiar there, so how does that affect our feeling? He's looking, not looking. we don't feel so comfortable in davening. And also, not always we feel like the davening is serious because my place, I'm serious in davening. So a person should have a place that he davens, and he changes it only for a need. Okay, that's his place. He can change it only for a need. That's the best thing, appropriate thing to do. Sometimes a person has 3 places to daven. Shachrit, he always davens in the minyan at 10 to 6. Shachrit. Mincha will always be in shul, at work. Okay, will always be at work. There'll be at 2 o'clock, mincha, and Mariv, there'll be a shir, and then there'll be Mariv. So for each prayer, each davening, he has a place, which that's the place. That's a permanent place for that davening. It's fine because that's his permanent place to daven. In the past, they didn't have it so much. Today it's more common. Another reason to have a shul in the fields in the past, where do you daven mincha? In the field. So where do you daven mincha today at work? There's all shul, or designated area. That's where everyone meets at the office. We know office at 3rd floor. That's where we meet for mincha, right? Or if you go to the central bus station, there's a shul there, the central bus station. So that's a shul which is a permanent. But in the past, it had to be in the field. So they had the shuls in the field. So anyway, so that a person should have a place where he davens, the permanent shul where he davens. What about a seat? The person needs to have also a seat where he davens in shul. So it's better to have a permanent seat. That's my seat. That's why I daven, and that's why I daven. But sometimes someone sits down on my seat. And I have a funny story of my friend, a good friend of mine, a chavruta of mine. So I tell him, hey, my place, please get up, or I just move. So what? We move, right? We move. So first, halachically, it's good to have your seat where you always daven there. But it's also important not to have kavod lechavero, right? It's a mitzvah midoraita, and embarrassing someone, and okay, he took my seat, and that's even worse. So we can let someone daven in our place, and we have the merit, we have the zchut of we gave our place to someone and we didn't disturb him. That's a great merit to go to davening. Also, if we sit close in 4 amot, which is approximately 2 meters or 6 feet, right? 4 amot, 6 feet, 2 meters. If we are in 2 amot, so it's still considered our place. So if I move 1 chair, 2 chairs from where I sit, it's still fine. Nothing happened. I promised you a story. So I have a chavruta who's a chozer b'tshuva. When he became religious, it was one of the first times he came to shul. So he comes to shul for Shabbos, and he sits down, and his name is Jason, my friend, and he sits down in shul, and then after a few minutes comes to him someone, and he's American, he doesn't know Hebrew, right? He's just become chozer b'tshuva, and says to him, makom kavua, which is my permanent place. He didn't hear well, also Hebrew. So he said Malcolm, which he thought his name. Said, nice to meet you, Malcolm. My name is Jason. How are you doing? And the person looked puzzled. What does he want from me? Anyway, now he's chozer b'tshuva. Now he's learns Torah, and he looks at a smile at that story. But we shouldn't. Someone sits down on a chair. It's fine. We can let him sit down and just find another place to sit. Another interesting halacha, which is almost built in most of the shuls, is when we move to shul, and when we come in from the street to shul, we take a breath. Okay? It takes a second or a moment to come to the mode of davening. I'm now davening, right? So it takes a moment. And also, we don't want to be so much influenced by what's happening outside or distracted by what's happening outside. So the Gemara says, and there's a few explanations for that, when a person comes into shul, he should go in 2 entrances to come to shul. 2 entrances. What does it mean, 2 entrances? So an entrance is a regular person. It's 4 tfachim, 40 centimeters. I think that's a bit wider. I think also people were maybe a bit smaller then, or they could maybe go on the side. But 4 tfachim, that's the entrance of a minimum entrance of a house. So when a person comes to shul, he should go in two entrances. Entrances 4 tvachim, 8 tvachim, 80 centimeters. 80 centimeters. What does it mean, 80 centimeters? Two explanations. One explanation is don't sit too close to the door. Why? Sit too close to the door, it looks like as if you want to escape, right? When we'll finish, I want to escape already, and also you're distracted from the outside. If that's a seat you got, and that's the only place you got, it's Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, and there's no other chair, so fine, that's fine. But if you have an option, don't sit right next to the door. Sit at least 80 centimeters away from the door. Again, some kind of distance. That's one explanation.
But not two doors.
Two doors. Two doors means each door is four tvachim, so each door is 40 centimeters. Two doors is 80 centimeters. Okay, so the distance of two doors, which is 80 centimeters. In most shuls, you won't find a chair next to the door because people need to go in and out, right? But another explanation, which is also brought to the halacha, is to wait a moment. How long does it take to walk the distance of two doors of 80 centimeters? Wait for a moment, take a breath, you come to shul, take a breath, wait for a few moments, and then start davening. To change the mindset. We came into shul, we had, the davening is something important enough to give it importance and to wait and not to rush to daven. Think a bit before we daven. So that's another explanation. Okay, so it's distancing from the doors, so you don't get distracted. It doesn't look like as if you want to escape, or wait for a few moments. And another explanation is that physically it's better to build a shul with two doors. You come in the entrance and then another entrance, and you come into the shul gradually. You go through some kind of process when you come into shul. It's not like rushing into shul and you do changes immediately. So that's another explanation brought by the Bach to come physically to two doors into the shul. If we build a shul, try and have a shul with two entrances. Most shuls, I think, are built like that. You have the lobby, you have the entrance to the lobby, and then you go through the lobby, and then you have another entrance to the main part of the shul. If you can build a shul like that, great. If you can't, so it's fine. Okay, but so we have the other explanations which are brought by Shulchan Aruch, which is the distance from the door or waiting those few seconds of walking 80 centimeters. A halacha, which you won't go so deep into it, is davening next to a wall. Davening next to a wall. When a person davens next to a wall, so first, just the way you feel. There's nothing distracting me. I know nothing is going in front of me, and that's the best way to daven. Obviously, not everyone can daven next to the wall, right? Otherwise, we'll have to have a very, very long, narrow shul, right? A wide and a very, very wide shul. Not everyone can daven next to a wall. But there shouldn't be preferably things that distract us from the wall, like something big in front of us that disturbs us or can distract us. So people are fine. If someone is standing in front of me, that's fine. But there should be next to a wall. We mentioned that also in the past, it's better to daven in a closed area. It gives more a feeling of serious. Something serious here is happening. When we go out to the field, so okay, now we are distracted by what's happening outside and we feel free. And in davening, there's some balance. On one hand, we don't want to feel like tired, as if we can't rise and create closer to Hashem. On the other hand, we want to feel that we have some kind of we are just free without any borders. We have limits, and that's why we want to overcome those limits. Another source for davening opposite the wall is from King Chizkiah, when he was sick, he was ill, and Ishayahu came to him, and the Torah had a discussion, and then the Chizkiah turns his face to the wall and davens to Hashem. Afterwards, he gets better, and he gets 15 years added to his life. And that's another source of davening opposite a wall.
Shouldn't daven next to, let's say, a window like this, or a mirror we consider.
So a mirror for sure, you shouldn't daven next to a mirror. it is good that the shul does have windows. So if you all of a sudden now you need to set your mind to look up to the heaven, to the sky, and you can get reminded of Hashem, but preferably not next to a window which is so low, and especially when you have kids running outside, and it can distract more than help to daven. Okay. And small things like this decoration here, that's part of the wall, that's fine. I saw shuls that they have nice drawings in the front of the shul. And I saw other shuls who had decorations on the sides of the shul, but purposely didn't have decorations on the front of the shul. So why not to have decorations in the front of the shul? Distraction, right? Distraction. So it's decorated by something. If you go to some of the shuls, you'll see those special windows and drawings of different. Right, around the Kodesh, it's true, but some are quite but some are quite nice and quite decorated. That's a common thing to do. But sometimes you have even drawings on the wall which even distract you even more than that. The windows of Chagall, right? Okay, they aren't in the front of the shul. If I remember correctly, they are in where are the windows of Chagall? Yeah, in the hospital. Right. So they, I think, from remember correctly, they're in the center of the room above, so they don't distract you so much. But to have an opposite those drawings, it's preferably not to do it. Or at least one should close his eyes.
Is there any thoughts about davening in front of or in back, directly in front of or directly in back of this person?
I was just wondering if to skip it or not to skip it, because okay, so since you're asking about halacha of davening in front or just in back of someone, so we'll go to it. I was going to go to the next halacha, next week we'll get to it, I think. Yeah, next week, about wearing a kippah. So next week we'll discuss the kippah. Where does the kippah come from? That's for next week. What about davening in front of a person? So the Shulchan Aruch says, also based on the Gemara, a person shouldn't daven next to his rabbi, behind his rabbi, or in front of his rabbi. And there's different reasons why not to. It looks like as if he's praying to his rabbi, or or maybe if he finishes davening after his rabbi and his rabbi wants to go back, so he can't go back because he's davening behind him. So different reasons why to daven in front, the side of him, and behind him. That's it. The rabbi. What about other people? It's fine. It's fine. If you couldn't daven before or next to, in front of, or behind other people, you would have to have huge, very, very large shuls, right? But shuls aren't so big. So, but you can daven in front or next to people. There's no problem davening next to people. Where do we have a problem? Walking in front of people who's davening. So if a person is davening, I have a problem in walking in front of him. I shouldn't walk in front of him, especially exactly in front of him for the distance of 4 amot from him. 4 amot, we said, is about 2 meters and more or less 6 feet. So I shouldn't walk in front of a person who's davening until he finishes davening. And if I'm davening and there's a person behind me who's davening and I finish davening before him, so I can't do those 3 steps until he finishes davening, what I can do is wait until he finishes davening, and then walk back. And in the meantime, wait silently. And when the chazan gets to Kaddish or Kedusha, just answer, because I finished my prayer. I just can't walk backwards. But I can, that's what I should do. So next to behind the rabbi, not to daven in the close distance to him, 4 amot. But otherwise, we can daven next to people. The Shulchan Aruch brings here a halacha, which doesn't apply so much when we are in shul, and then all of a sudden, the time now? We have another minute and a half. Okay. Can we change our position in the middle of davening? davening Shmoneh Esrei, can I change my position in the middle of davening? Change my place. So not my position, I'm at my place. Sorry. Can I walk in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei? Shulchan Aruch brings a case. I'm in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, and there's a kid without a diaper on who missed the shul. He missed, and now I can't daven where I'm standing. Says the Shulchan Aruch, I can move. Yeah, I can move in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei or go out of the shul and continue davening. Walking in Shmoneh Esrei it's not like talking in Shmoneh Esrei. We shouldn't talk during Shmoneh Esrei. But just walking in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei without talking, it's easier. So obviously, in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, we stand, we don't move, we don't talk. But if I need to, I can move. I can move. Maybe more of a common halacha could be if I'm in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei and I have my child next to me and he's now starting to cry and he's disturbing everyone to daven, and also disturbing me. In the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, I can get up and move him. Or, for example, in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, and it's Rosh Chodesh, and I don't remember Ya'aleh V'Yavo off by heart, and I realize that my Siddur doesn't have Ya'aleh V'Yavo in it. It got cut off. I just don't have a Siddur. And now, how do that happen? So I can move in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei and take my Siddur. So we have a few cases in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei which we can move. We shouldn't fiddle with other things. But if I'm moving for the sake of davening, okay, so I can have a better intention, better kavana, then I can move in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei. We'll conclude here. And B'ezrat Hashem, continue next week with the question, what do we have to wear kippah in shul? But that's for next week.